Hey everybody, my name is Lee, and I did something with my UV printer that I really want to share with you. I had a client that wanted something printed in a gold color, and my particular printer, it's a Mamaki 6042 UV printer. It prints in every color but metallics. Well, it can simulate a metallic, but we really wanted the sparkle of gold. So I kind of thought, how could we possibly do this? And it worked out great, so I want to share that with you, how it worked. In this particular case, the client wanted these crystal blocks. So each of these blocks is about 4 inches by 4 inches wide and tall. They're about an inch and a half thick. And what you're seeing here is the pink. So that was printed on the back side of the glass, reverse printed on the back. And now we're going to be looking more closely in this video about printing on the front. I want to show you some of the supplies I used. This is the gold, I don't think it's 24 karat gold, it's gold colored mica powder. This little bag, 10 grams, they're looking at the label. I purchased from Amazon. It was in with like 30 different colors, and it was about, I would say, maybe $15 for this entire set. And this was one of the colors that was included. When I applied the powder, I needed to have something that was kind of light and delicate, and I used these disposable sponges. They're what I use normally to clean my printer on a daily basis or sometimes even twice a day. But I wanted to use these because they're disposable, and the mica powder is this tiny little particulate stuff. The stuff gets everywhere, and I wanted to be able to use these so I could dispose of them after I was done. Here's a clip of my printer in action. What we're doing right now is we are printing. This is a little bit later in the stage of the application process, but I want to show you what the printer looks like when it's running. And this is exactly what we saw when we were printing on the primer. My printer has a jettable primer, so this is a clear solution that is held like an ink, and the system prints that exactly according to the graphic that I'm using. So I used, in this case, the word glow and printed that on the very front surface of the glass. Gave the glass a great cleaning with alcohol and using a little lint-free cloth. Put it into the printer exactly in position, and then I ran the printer printing the word glow using just the primer only. So it's a completely colorless ink, if you will. It's really there to help other stuff stick to the glass or whatever else you're printing on. So this is a perfect opportunity to use primer as a glue, if you will, for my mica powder. The details of this shot are really important. It may seem subtle, but what you can see here is you can see I have the block um, on the bed of the printer, and I have a 90-degree um, angle tool uh, actually taped down to the bed of the printer. And the reason I have this is so I can pick up the block after I'm done printing this layer of primer, and then I can apply the mica powder, which I'm going to show you, and then put this thing back onto the printer exactly where it was before. So this is how I align the substrate I'm printing on. So in this case, this crystal block. So I also mark an X on the bottom, and that reminds me of where the bottom is. So I'm not flipping this around after I'm cleaning it and getting confused on the orientation. So it kind of sits here in this jig, and the X reminds me of where the bottom is. This is the block after it's been in the printer. We've applied the word glow using the jettable primer. So again, the primer is to make things stick to it. And the the touch and the feel of the stuff, if you put your finger on it, is slightly sticky and slightly tacky. And this is using a full cure of the UV light. That's just how primer works. This next step is absolutely the funnest step of this whole process. Basically, we're taking the swab, we dip it into the bag, give a little bit of foam on it, and then I start applying it to the primer. I'm using a very light touch, and these little circular motions seem to work really well. And if I start feeling the swab drag, it's like it's lost all the powder it has on it. So I stop and I go back in and get a little bit more powder on it, or flip it over and continue working. So these little tiny circles, circular motions, the light touch, applying the gold mica powder in this case sparingly. There you can see we've kind of flipped the swab over, continuing on to the other one I've done. This is also a time sensitive process, meaning um, the primer is going to continue to cure, and I want to print it and then apply the mica powder fairly soon after. So I always avoid printing, multiple copies of this. I'm going to print an entire bed of these with the primer and then go back and apply the mica. I want to do that fairly quickly after it's been applied because of the fact that it does continue to cure. And I want this layer pretty sticky, nice and sticky to adhere as much of that powder as it could possibly take. While applying the powder is really fun. This is probably one of the most gratifying steps, and that's removing the excess powder. And I can't stress how important this is. We're working outside the printer. We are not on the print bed when we applied the powder or now during this cleanup. So I use a microfiber cloth that is slightly moistened the tiniest bit with alcohol. And I go through and I very lightly remove all of the excess powder from the surface. The microfiber towel, I think, is probably imperative to have on hand to pick up all of the excess powder. I clean this thing as carefully as I can now. Just the front sides, the back side, because I'm going to be going back into my printer and printing a clear coat of varnish, a gloss clear coat over um, this layer of mica powder. That reassures me that it's not going to be getting on to the client later. It's going to be shedding, and it just makes a nice final finish for it. Okay, now that we're clean, we're going to head back into the printer, and again, this is where those taped down 90-degree angles are so helpful. They tell me exactly from a right side and a bottom side of how I need to replace the block in the printer, because I really want to align that graphic that the printer software has back up perfectly with the layer of mica powder on here. And so here I'm printing the layer of clear gloss. So this is the final step. So it's a layer of clear gloss that I've actually kind of expanded out by about 2 pixels all the way around the graphic. So it's making a seal, if you will, around that graphic. So we're printing the clear. I told the printer to print that clear in a gloss format, and it's spectacular. I love these things. Thank you. This was the first video. I have so many more ideas. So this is where I have to tell you to like and subscribe and ring that bell. All right. There's going to be more coming very, very soon. Thank you.